So we're coming up to the holiday season and you're wondering, when should you go about reviewing our classroom procedures? Well, today I'm going to be sharing not only when to start reviewing your classroom procedures, some common signs you might see in class, but also how I personally go about reviewing my classroom procedures throughout the school year. So with that being said, let's dive in. Hey, teacher bestie. My name's Helena, and I'm the creator of the Present Teacher Podcast. I'm a first year teacher coach, and in this podcast, you are going to learn everything from simple, actionable classroom management, social emotional learning, and teacher wellness strategies. You know that impact you want to make in the classroom? Well, we're going to make it happen here. Before we dive into reviewing classroom procedures, let's first talk about what classroom procedures are. Classroom procedures are how you expect your students to interact with each other and throughout the room. Things like raising their hand, talking in a group, talking with a partner, showing you that they're ready to move on, showing you that they have a question, getting in line. All of these are different examples of what classroom procedures are. So now that we've talked about what classroom procedures are, let's talk about when it's time to review. Some common signs that might come up when it's time to review is when you have to remind your students multiple times to do something. A great example of this is if your students are constantly chatting in line or getting in line, and your expectation is that they're at a level 0 to listen for instructions, and you have to constantly remind them 20, 30 times, that's a good sign that it might be time to review your classroom procedure of getting in line. The second sign that it might be time to review your classroom procedure is that you are having to redirect disruptive behavior so much that now it's taking away instruction time. A great example of this is if your students are constantly talking to each other and you constantly have to stop instruction to address the disruptive behavior, that's a good indicator that it's a great time to review the expectation and the classroom procedure. The third and common final sign that it's time to review a classroom procedure is when there's more than one student not following the procedure. Oftentimes, when I see that two or more students are not following the procedure and expectations, that's a good indicator to me that as a class, we really need to review and practice that procedure again until it becomes a habit. Now, when it's one single student, oftentimes I will stand closer to them to get back on track. If that doesn't work, I will specifically praise students who are following the expectation and things I like about them. So, for example, let's say I have a student who's messing around in line. I'll say, "Thank you so much, student A. I love how you have walking feet getting in line. I love how so and so has a bubble in their mouth as they're getting in line. I love how so and so has their hands behind their back or to their sides while in line. Oh, thank you so and so for having your eyes forward while we're in line." These are all, I'm not only praising the students, good job, so and so, I'm actually giving them the specific action they're doing. And then once that student fixes that disruptive behavior that they're choosing to do, then I will praise them as well once they fix their behavior to follow the expectations and procedures in class. So, with all that being said, now that you know the signs that it's time to review a classroom procedure, let's go about how I like to review classroom procedures. The first way I like to review or bring up a procedure that I want to review as a class is I will reintroduce the procedure to the class and what I've been noticing in class. So, an example of this could be, "Good morning, class. Today we're going to review raising our hands because I noticed that a lot of students have forgotten that when they want to add to the discussion, we raise our hands. So let's talk about raising our hand." After you've reintroduced and you mention what you're noticing in class, you're going to dive into teaching the classroom procedure. Now, this is going to sound, if you've been around a long time and you've already listened to my classroom procedure content, then this is going to sound familiar. But the first thing I like to do is I like to physically get up and model the right way. So I will act like a student and I will model to them what it should look like and sound like. After I model it, we have a discussion as a class. What should it look like? What should it sound like? After we've had that discussion, then I dive into the wrong way to do it. I'll pretend I'm a student and I might goof off. I might talk to my friends instead of following an expectation. And then we will have a discussion on what this procedure shouldn't look like and sound like. And the final piece on top is we practice or we talk about why. Why is it important we do it the first way and not the second way? And they'll come up with a list of reasons why. The final step is we practice as a class. And here's the biggest piece of advice I could give you. When I first started teaching, I was terrified to be the mean teacher, and I felt guilty for having my students practice something over and over again because I didn't want to be the mean teacher. But as I've gotten older and more experienced, I learned there's the difference between being mean and malicious versus having high expectations of your students and expecting them to do something at a certain level. For example, it's not mean of me to have you practice your math facts Monday through Friday until you get them down well and they're naturally a habit and they're naturally wired in your brain. It's having high expectations for what I expect you to learn and be able to do by the time you leave my class. The same thing applies to behavior. You have expectations that your students will follow this way of doing things because you have high expectations of them, not because you're mean and malicious. Those are two different things. So now that we've kind of talked about how to review the classroom procedure, if you want some help with this, I actually created a bunch of classroom procedure slides that you can use. What I like about these ones is I've already filled out what it could possibly look like and sound like. I've also made another slide that shows what it shouldn't look like and sound like so you can have a discussion with your class, and they're already pre-filled out so you don't have to sit there and, try to type and make all these slides. I did it for you. And if you want to edit any of it, let's say that I have my students, or in the example, I have students walking in a line at a level 0, but for your class, you don't really care if they're at a level 0 or not. They could be at a level 2 or 3. You can simply edit the slides to fit your expectations. I just got them started, so it'll save you a bunch of time. And I think there's about at least 40 procedures that's covered in those slides, so make sure to check those out. And I like to use these at the beginning of the year, but also throughout the year to review throughout the year. It makes it so much easier. Now that we talked about how to review your classroom procedures, I'm going to give you a quick example all the way through on what reviewing classroom procedures might look like. So to start this off, let's say I have students who are having a hard time getting in line. That's the procedure that I notice we're having a hard time in class. So I'm going to walk into teacher mode and I'm going to teach you, like I would my students, on how I might go about this. Good morning, class. Good morning, Miss Haynes. Today, I noticed that yesterday we had a really hard time with getting in line at the end of the day, and it was taking away from our instruction time. And I really don't want that to happen because I really value your education and your time. So today, we're going to dive into what it should look like and sound like to get in line. All right, so first, I'm going to model to you what it should look like and sound like to get in line. I personally use songs, so I would play the song. All right, pretend I'm a student and I'm going to show you what it should look like and sound like to get in line. For those of you that can't see me, I just pushed in my chair, I was walking feet, and I walked across my office. All right, class, what did you notice that it looked like and sound like when I got in line? You're right, I did have walking feet. You're right, I did have a bubble in my mouth. I did have my hands to myself. Yes, I had a level 0. Good, my body was calm. Yep, and my body was quiet. Good. Now that we've talked about and modeled the right way to do it, we're going to model the wrong way to do it. So I'm going to have 2 volunteers. Since we know what this procedure should look like, we're going to have 2 volunteers show me what it shouldn't look like. All right, student A, student B, please show us what this procedure shouldn't look like. All right, what did you notice that this procedure shouldn't look like? You're right, they had running feet, they were talking in line, they were playing with each other or playing a game in line. Yes, they didn't have walking feet, they were being loud, they ran, they forgot to push in their chair. Correct. All right, perfect. Now that we've talked about the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it, why is it important that we do it the right way? You're right, to keep each other safe, to save instruction time. Yes, because we don't have a lot of time in class and we want to make sure we're making every second count. Yes, correct. Perfect. Now that we've talked about why it's important, I want you guys to show me that you know what it looks like and sounds like to get in line. So when I play this song, I want everybody to show me what it should look like and sound like to get in line. Plays the song, they practice. Okay, so you get the idea. And I might have them practice over and over again. Like, I really liked how so and so did this and did this. Let's see if the whole class can do that this time. And then I play the song and they do it again. So that's what a model walking in line might look like or getting in line might look like. And again, using those slides that I created beforehand is really going to help me because I don't have to make anchor charts. I can just refer back to it throughout the year. So now that we've not only talked about signs that it might be time to review classroom procedures, but we talked about how I like to review classroom procedures and how I modeled a way to review your classroom procedures. The next thing you might be wondering is when in the time of year do I like to review classroom procedures? I review classroom procedures, like I said, whenever it's distracting others, whenever it's taking away instruction time, whenever there's 2 or more students who forgotten the procedure or not following the expectations. But I also like to purposefully plan out specific days throughout the year where I will review the classroom procedures. A great example for this here in the United States is Thanksgiving break. That or fall break. That's a great time after those long weekends to come back and spend a day reviewing the classroom procedures. If I notice that throughout the year, just in general, I need a quick touch on a procedure, I'll just pull up the classroom procedures slide and do it. But other times that I might plan is maybe after winter break. When my students come in from winter break, we spend the first couple of days really going over classroom procedures because I'd rather spend 1 or 2 days designated to reviewing the classroom procedures than having to stop instruction constantly to redirect disruptive behavior because we've forgotten the classroom procedure. Another great time is before and after spring break. All of these are great times to review your classroom procedures because the whole goal of classroom procedures is to create habits. You're creating habits so your students naturally follow the expectations in class without thinking about it. The more you practice it, the more it becomes a habit. They say on average it takes 27 times for something to become a habit. So as you practice throughout the year, eventually your class runs on autopilot. And apart from a couple touches here and there and reviewing classroom procedures, your classroom runs automatically. And that is my goal in my classroom as a teacher, is to get my students to run the classroom without me having to say anything. So that wraps up how I like to review and when to review classroom procedures. If you would like this to take this a step further, I have a ton of content about classroom procedures, so make sure to check that out. And if you want to take it a step further, I have the Ultimate Classroom Management Guide. It answers the top 10 questions I get asked in regards to classroom management. Plus, I link to additional YouTube and podcast episodes for you to dive into deeper answers to these questions. Second thing I have for you is the Classroom Management Challenge. This is a 15-day challenge that walks you through everything I know about mastering your classroom to have it running on autopilot. Classroom management was one of those things I really struggled with the first couple of years, but once I found out what worked for me, I continued using it. I've helped other teachers in my building, I've trained people in my district, and so I'm really happy to share all those tools that I use, and I really help you through this 15-day challenge, walk you through how to take what works for me and make it your own. So if you want to learn more about that, make sure to check out the description. The last thing is, don't forget to check out the Classroom Management Bundle. In the Classroom Management Bundle, I have things like classroom procedure slides and other stuff like that, like I mentioned earlier today, that you can use that'll make managing your classroom run so much easier. So with all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know which procedures are you going to be reviewing soon, or when do you like to review your classroom procedures? Let me know in the comments or send me a DM. As always, remember, we are stronger together, and I will see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope that you were able to take away some value that will help you thrive inside and out of the classroom. It would mean the world to me if you could take 5 seconds right now and leave a review on this podcast. And if you found this podcast especially helpful, make sure to take a screenshot of this episode right now and tag me on your socials to let me know you're listening. As always, remember that we are stronger together. With all the love in the world, Helena, aka the President Teacher. See you next time, Teacher Bestie.